The Boston Bruins want David Pastrnak to be a lifelong member of the team. But what is that going to cost on a contract that could be signed as early as Wednesday? Going to talk about that as well as a busy week ahead here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things spoke to be, as well as take a look around the NHL. Today is Monday, July 11th, and this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. So please do smash that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. There was a bonus, well, not a bonus pod, but one dropped on Sunday to recap what the Bruins did at the 2022 NHL entry draft that you're not going to want to miss. If you're on social media, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey tweets, at Ian C. McLaren. Lifelong Bruins fan, covering this team for various outlets for about 17 years. And one of the most exciting players that has come along in that time is David Pastrnak. After making 6 picks at the NHL Draft, General Manager Don Sweeney met with reporters at Bell Center on Friday afternoon to provide the latest on contract negotiations with David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, and even David Krejci. Here's what he had to say about David Pastrnak, who can become an unrestricted free agent next summer and who can sign a max 8-year deal with the Bruins as early as Wednesday, July 13th, 1 year before next year's free agent period begins. The two sides have began discussing a framework for a contract extension. Sweeney met with agents J.P. Barry and Alice Volek in Montreal, and he said those discussions went well. They're going to go back, talk to David, and attack it as soon as they can. They know the position the organization is in and how aggressive they'd like to be, according to Don Sweeney. Pastrnak has a say in that, obviously, so you hope the two things align and you move forward in an aggressive manner. He's a big part of the Boston Bruins, of course, as their best goal scorer, a former Rocket Richard Trophy winner. Specific terms have yet to be addressed between the camps. The Bruins, again, because he is their player, they can offer him a max 8 years, whereas if he were to go to free agency, teams could only offer him 7 years, so they have an advantage that way. But the Bruins have strongly indicated they'd like Pastrnak to be a lifelong Bruin. Sweeney said he's a good player, continues to be a really good player, a superstar in the league, and he's a superstar around the world. The Bruins are fortunate to have him. He had character from day one, a vibrant personality that hasn't changed, and Sweeney said he's a special individual, to tell you the truth. So what exactly could this cost the Boston Bruins? What will it take to make David Pastrnak a lifelong Bruin? Like I said, they can offer him a maximum 8 years. So what's the valuation of that going to be? We know players love their numbers. David Pastrnak is number 88. 8 years, $11 million per gives you the $88 million contract. What would be preferable would be an $8.8 million valuation. So 8 years, high $60 million instead of 88. But that will be a bit too low for David Pasternak's taste, I'm sure. Over the past several seasons, since the beginning of 2017, 2018, Pastrnak is fifth in goals in the NHL, behind only Alex Ovechkin, Austin Matthews, Leon Draisaitl, and Connor McDavid. He has 181 goals in 338 games played in that time. And he's up there in terms of total points as well. 15th overall in total points. He had a slow start this season. We know that he was deeply affected, like anybody would be, by personal tragedy last summer, but he ended the season with 40 goals, 77 points in 72 games. Playoffs, he's been a beast. 30 goals, 44 assists in 70 career playoff games as well. And yeah, just been an amazingly consistent goal scorer for the Bruins. Goal totals 34, 35, 38 goals in 66 games back in 2018, 2019. 48 goals in 70 games back in 2019, 2020. Would have hit 50 were it not for COVID-19. 48 games played, 20 goals in 2020, 2021, and then 40 goals this past season, 32 of which were scored in 2022. Does he belong among the highest paid players in the game? Certainly. If you look at the top cap players in the NHL, players making over $11 million, or at least 11, you have John Tavares, Drew Doughty. He's more valuable than those two guys. Erik Karlsson, yep. Connor McDavid, highest paid player, 12.5. Artemi Panarin, 11.64. Austin Matthews, just slightly underneath that. Mitch Marner making 10.9. Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Carey Price, Sergei Bobrovsky, Jack Eichel, Alexander Barkov, and Anze Kopitar rounding out the players making double-digit millions. David Pastrnak belongs in that group. And we'll see if the Bruins are willing to cough that up and make him the highest paid player in franchise history. The Bruins, of course, have benefited greatly from some team-friendly contracts for Bergeron, Marchand, even Pastrnak over the last several years. They coughed up and gave 9.5 to Charlie McAvoy, and they're likely going to have to give at least 10 to David Pastrnak. Before we get to what Don Sweeney had to say about Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, and some other topics, a quick word about Athletic Greens. What is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports gut health, your nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced some gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine that cost him over $100 a day. created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create an optimal nutritional routine on your own. It's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. No need for a million different pills and supplements. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. That's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, so along with updating the David Pastrnak situation, Don Sweeney also said there are really no changes when it comes to Patrice Bergeron. It's been reported he's going to agree to a 1-year bonus-laden contract. He's going through rehab, back training after elbow surgery. He indicated in a positive manner. Then he paused and said Patrice should be the one to make that statement if he decides to. But he's made real good indications that he's trying to do it in the right manner. But until he makes a decision, the Bruins will wait. It's possible there'll be a resolution in place by the opening of free agency on Wednesday afternoon. But only Patrice can make that statement. Meanwhile, David Krejci could be nearing a decision when it comes to returning to the NHL after a year of playing back in his native Czechia. Sweeney said David's a little more wait and see where communication lies. Patrice is a bit of a cut and dry situation. Won't be an issue with the contract, but Krejci's deciding with his family what's best for him. But there's been a positive indication. Just hasn't got to the point where Don Sweeney is comfortable saying it's going to happen. So that's potentially huge. A positive indication that David Krejci might indeed return to the Boston Bruins. Gotta love coffee. Now, Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci coming back would be huge for the Boston Bruins. They do only have 2.383 in current cap space heading into free agency, which kicks off on Wednesday. Speaking of the center position, it's been reported that Dylan Strome will not be qualified by the Chicago Blackhawks, making him an unrestricted free agent. He's a guy that I have been wanting to be a Boston Bruin for quite some time. Bruins just don't have the cap space right now to add a guy who will be in high demand unless they can move a Nick Foligno, a Craig Smith, an Eric Haula, Thomas Nosek, bury Chris Wagner perhaps, move a Mike Riley. So it's kind of like the draft all over again. Day one, Bruins, hands were tied. They didn't have a first-round pick. They're likely going to have no flexibility to work in free agency because the roster is pretty much already set for next season. Speaking of set for next season, Sweeney also said that 3 remaining assistants from Bruce Cassidy's tenure that are under contract are expected to return under new bench boss Jim Montgomery. That includes Joe Sacco, Chris Kelly, and Bob Essensa. They all had positive meetings with Montgomery, and they're all in a really good place. The indications are they'll be part of the staff, and Monty is excited about it. Excited to work with him, as are they with him. He also went on to say that Montgomery is interviewing candidates to replace assistant Kevin Dean, who was let go by Bruce Cassidy before he was fired. He's been doing a lot of work to connect with players individually, several conversations, and he's also interviewing some coaches that will replace Kevin Dean. They're all going to follow up when they get back to Boston, which they presumably are, and Jim Montgomery will be formally introduced to the media and the Boston hockey community here on Monday. On tomorrow's podcast, I'll recap everything that he had to say in that regard. Speaking of still being in Boston, I had tweeted last week that David Krejci, clearly in Boston, based on his wife's Instagram activity. They were at the Red Sox game last night, so he will hopefully be speaking to Don Sweeney at some point here in the next couple days. Finally, no long-term concerns regarding the health of Brad Marchand, who underwent double hip surgery. The winger expects to rebound strongly from the procedure. It's stuff that he's dealt with playing every night on both sides. So mentally, he's going to be in a better place. And physically, the Bruins are going to allow him all the time he needs to heal. There won't be, hopefully, any residual effects. It's been done for a lot of guys, including Braden Point. And he wanted to do both at the same time. They could have staggered it, but he just wanted to get it over with and be done and be 100%. And again, Sweeney wasn't sure if the Bruins are going to utilize long-term injured reserve for Marchand or, say, McAvoy, Grzelcyk. Depends on what they do in the next couple of days. Not ideal, but it's a maneuver they could use. Keep in mind, whatever they add, space will have to be made to accommodate these guys coming back. So those were the updates that Don Sweeney gave following the draft. You can hear what he said about the draft if you check out Sunday's podcast. And before we move to development camp roster that was announced in the beginning of that today, BetOnline is your number one source for all betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news at BetOnline, your continued source for all sport wagering information, live betting, esports, props, and scores. It's the best spot for all your sports scores and news this season as well. Fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite events like MMA and boxing and golf. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you daily 30-minute podcasts on all things NHL all year long. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Next step for the Bruins is development camp, which will begin today and run through Friday, July 15th. Roster features 36 players, 20 forwards, 12 defensemen, 4 goalies. You have some guys who have already played at the NHL level, including Mark McLaughlin. Actually, I think he's the only player who appeared at the NHL level. You have some former or last year's draft picks, Gasso, Harrison. You have Matt Poitras, Frederick Brunette, others who were drafted this season. It all begins today at 10:45 and will run through Friday. Today as well is the deadline to qualify restricted free agents. Jack Hashan, Jack Stanika, Matt Philippi will be able or be looking to be qualified, and hopefully all goes smooth there. And then Wednesday, of course, is the beginning of free agency. There will be some players made available who we didn't think would be available, including Dylan Strome, but it doesn't seem as though the Bruins will be able to make room for him, unfortunately. If you want to get down, check out development camp, Warrior Ice Arena, and you can see Matt Poitras in action. Second round pick of the Boston Bruins. Danzluk Melis will be there as well. I mentioned McLaughlin, Georgi Merkulov, who made a splash with the Providence Bruins to end last season. Cole Spicer will be there. Burnett, Jackson Edward, Reed Dick, as well as last year's goaltending pick, Philip Svedebak, Brendan Bussey, who was signed. So some pretty exciting prospects will be there. Who won't be there? Fabian Lysell. He's back in Sweden, getting ready for the World Juniors. Mason Lohrei will not be there. He's recovering from an injury. Those are, I guess you could still call Stanika a prospect, but those two guys, Lysell, Lohrei, probably the most exciting, intriguing prospects that the Bruins had. And we'll see what they're able to do in training camp in terms of impressing. I think that's pretty much it when it comes to Bruins updates following a pretty busy weekend. Again, apologies for not getting a podcast up on Friday, but yesterday was the draft recap in case you missed it. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today's episode, friends. Wanted to get you updated on Pastrnak. Let you know to keep an eye on Stanika, Philippi, and Marchand today. They're qualifying offers. And other than that, there's probably going to be quite a lot of movement around the NHL that you're going to want to keep an eye on, including Matt Murray possibly going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Finally, former Bruins defenseman Wade Redden hired as a development coach for the Ottawa Senators today, which is pretty cool. Obviously, a longtime Senators defenseman as well. And look out for the Detroit Red Wings adding Ville Husso, Ottawa Senators adding Alex DeBrincat, and could be an interesting Atlantic Division next year, especially if the Bruins get off to a slow start. But Jim Montgomery will help try to avoid that. He will be officially introduced today as head coach, and I'll recap everything he has to say on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Hope you all had a great weekend. I was out camping, came back, crashed yesterday, wicked sunburn, perhaps a bit of heat stroke. Watched the season finale of The Boys, which to me far better than any of the Marvel shows on Netflix or Disney Plus. Tonight, hoping to catch the new Westworld, and Better Call Saul is back, which I'm very, very excited about. Anyways, take care, friends. Have a great Monday. We'll talk to you again tomorrow here on the Locked On Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.